Okay, imagine this. AI actually talking about how it thinks.
Mm-hmm.
Not just, doing a task, but explaining its own
Right.
internal world.
Right.
Sounds like the ultimate peek behind the curtain, doesn't it? Like, we're
Yeah.
finally about to understand what's going on inside.
Yeah, finally getting that glimpse into true machine intelligence
Yeah.
from the inside out.
But is that really what's happening here? Or is it maybe something else?
That's absolutely the core question for our deep dive today. We're really wrestling with this fascinating space between AI explainability,
Right.
which is, getting an AI to generate a story about why it did something, and this other idea, potentially much more significant, of AI that's verifiable.
Verifiable, meaning we can trust its correctness from the get-go. Like,
Yeah.
no explanation needed.
Exactly. Built on a foundation we can actually prove is sound.
Okay. And we've pulled together a pretty interesting stack of sources to help us figure this out.
Yeah, we have. We've got articles discussing Anthropic's Claude, for instance.
And some pieces looking specifically at their Claude Explains blog initiative, where humans and AI are actually working together on content.
That's right. And even a really revealing Reddit thread, people just grappling with Claude's own attempts to describe its internal workings.
Fascinating. So our mission today, basically cut through the hype.
Pretty much. Let's unpack what these AI explanations really are. Think about why critical thinking is, well, more crucial than ever.
And look at how one company is trying to bridge that human-AI gap in practice.
And yeah, ultimately try and see where the future of genuinely trusted AI might actually be headed.
All right, let's start right at the beginning. First principles. What's the fundamental problem when we try to understand what's happening inside these really powerful AI models?
Well, it all boils down to what everyone calls the AI black box.
Right. Heard that term a lot.
You feed data or maybe a prompt into a large language model, right? Yep. Or some other complex system.
Mm-hmm.
It then crunches through, billions, maybe trillions of parameters and calculations. It's incredibly complex.
And then, poof, an answer comes out.
Right.
Text, a prediction, whatever.
Exactly. But that whole intricate dance in the middle, almost completely opaque. You see the input, you see the output.
But the how and the why are just gone, hidden.
Pretty much hidden away, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
and maybe for simple stuff, you don't really care how it works.
Right, like generating a grocery list.
But when these AIs are doing serious things like medical diagnosis, financial trading, even helping draft laws, that lack of visibility becomes a huge trust problem.
Absolutely massive. So companies are trying to tackle this with explainability, right? Like the features built into Claude to kind of shine a light inside that box.
So that's the idea.
That's the attempt, yes.
Yeah.
One of our sources describes it as essentially training another AI model.
Another one?
Yeah, specifically to narrate the actions of the first AI. It looks at the output and tries to build this plausible, human-friendly story about how that output might have been generated.
Okay, hold on. This is where my brain starts, doing flips. If an AI is explaining itself, surely that is understanding, isn't it? What am I missing?
Well, the catch, and this is a really key insight from one article, is that it's not necessarily a window into the AI's actual, let's call it cognitive process, if we can even use that word.
Okay, so what is it then?
It's more like the AI is using its massive training data to figure out the most statistically probable story that fits the output after it's already produced it.
Ah, okay, like that brilliant analogy from one of the sources.
Yeah.
The toddler who draws all over the wall.
Yeah.
And when you ask why, they just beam and say, the wall was lonely, it needed friends.
Exactly that. The toddler's explanation, it sounds kind of plausible in its own kid logic, right?
Sure.
But it doesn't mean their actual motivation before drawing was this conscious thought about alleviating the wall's loneliness.
Right. It's a story they made up afterwards to make sense of it. Or maybe just to get out of trouble.
Precisely. It's a post hoc justification.
So applying that to AI, it's like one AI model is writing a plausible sounding summary or kind of postmortem for what another AI did.
You got it. One source had these great descriptions calling it an auto-generated comment section for your AI's code.
Ah, I like that.
Or even like a PR agent for the AI.
A PR agent.
Oh,
okay. So it spins the action in the best possible light using the narrative frameworks it learned during training.
Exactly. It generates the most convincing story it can. So while it's super clever and maybe useful for debugging or just getting some kind of narrative.
It's not the same as genuine self-awareness.
Yeah.
Or like a real deep collaboration based on shared understanding.
No, it's a generated description. It's not direct insight into the actual process.
Which brings us right back to you, listening.
Yeah.
in this world that's just getting filled increasingly with AI-generated stuff.
Emails, articles, summaries.
And even these AI-generated explanations. How on earth do we figure out what's actually reliable? This is where critical thinking isn't just, a nice skill to have. It feels absolutely non-negotiable now.
It really puts the responsibility back onto us, doesn't it? Critical thinking here means not just taking that plausible story the AI offers at face value.
Okay.
It means digging deeper, questioning that narrative, trying to understand the underlying reality or truth that actually led to the output, regardless of what the AI says about it.
Okay, let's use a couple of classic characters to really nail this idea, because they perfectly embody this kind of approach to information.
Good idea. Like Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah. Perfect.
He never, ever just accepts the easy explanation, right? The story the suspect gives, or what seems obvious at first glance.
No way.
He meticulously examines everything the AI's output, its generated explanation, other facts he can find to piece together the actual sequence of events, the real motivations.
The truth hidden beneath that surface story. He's basically reverse engineering reality, not just accepting a plausible narrative. Like that source mentioned.
Exactly. Or think about Neo in The Matrix.
Good one.
He's living inside this incredibly convincing simulated reality, right? Which is kind of like a very plausible AI output or explanation.
Totally immersive.
But he can't just accept what he sees. He has to learn to look beyond that constructed surface, to understand the underlying code, the actual processes running the simulation.
To see the truth behind the illusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the crucial point for us here is an AI's ability to generate a convincing explanation. That's a function of its language skills, its pattern matching.
Right. It's good at language.
It's not necessarily a reflection of accurate introspection or, factual truth about how it really works inside.
So critical thinking demands we look for verification, independent validation, not just to accept the AI's story about itself.
Precisely. We need confirmation, not just visibility or a good narrative.
Okay, so if pure AI explainability is, let's say, more plausible story than factual insight, how are companies actually dealing with this challenge right now, in the real world? How do you use AI's power for creating things, but still make sure it's accurate and trustworthy?
Well, this is where Anthropic's Claude Explains blog initiative comes in. It's highlighted in several of our sources, and it's a really interesting case study.
Okay, tell me about that.
It's basically a direct attempt to navigate this gray area. They're combining AI's strengths with, and this is key, essential human oversight.
Human oversight, okay.
It's a dedicated content channel, like a blog, designed to show how AI can assist humans, specifically in writing informative articles.
And the process itself.
Yeah.
The sources lay that out, right? Claude, the AI, does the initial heavy lifting.
Yeah, exactly. It handles the first drafts. It can process huge amounts of info, generate outlines, get that first pass down, especially for technical topics or exploring creative ways to use the AI itself. That's the AI's speed and scale.
But then the humans step in.
Absolutely critical part, the human component. Subject matter experts, editorial teams. They are deeply involved.
Yep.
The sources are really clear on this. These humans review, they refine, they add context, real-world examples the AI might miss.
And crucially, fact-checking, correcting mistakes.
Yes. Most importantly, fact-checking and correcting inaccuracies. They really stress this is explicitly not just dumping raw AI output onto the blog.
Got it. And the purpose behind doing it this way?
Well, multiple sources point to a couple of things. Partly, it's demonstrating a model for effective human-AI collaboration in content creation.
Showing AI as a tool that augments human work, not just replaces it.
Exactly. And it also promotes responsible AI use by having that human oversight baked right into the process.
And did some sources mention they were still hiring editors?
Yeah, sources 5 and 6 noted that Anthropic is still actively hiring for these editorial roles, which really underscores how essential they see that human layer being.
Okay, so contrast that approach with, the examples where AI content has gone wrong precisely because that human gatekeeping was missing.
Right, and we've seen those reports mentioned in the sources too. Business Insider recommending books that literally don't exist.
Oh, wow.
Bloomberg having to correct AI-generated financial summaries. Gyango Media publishing articles just riddled with basic factual errors.
Yikes. And these are consequences of just relying on the AI without that robust human check.
Directly, yeah. It really highlights that AI hallucination, just making stuff up, is a very real, very persistent problem.
And this whole tension between the AI generating something plausible sounding and the absolute need for human verification. It's perfectly captured in that Reddit discussion we looked at.
Oh yeah, that thread was fascinating. Source 2. Users were specifically talking about Claude's own attempts to explain its internal features and how it worked.
Using analogies, right.
Exactly. Claude used these really intuitive analogies, describing features like a complex musical chord or like Lego bricks you can assemble in different ways.
And some users found that helpful.
Yeah, one user, LowEdge343, found them quite intuitive, helpful for just getting a conceptual handle on things.
But others were skeptical.
Immediately, people jumped in asking, okay, is Claude really intersecting here? Or is it just generating plausible metaphors based on all the text it's read?
Like, is it just elaborate hallucination? Or inaccurate self-modeling? Users like Dojima, Insane, or BT raised those flags.
And here's the kicker, the most revealing part. The original poster then took actual technical documentation about Claude's architecture.
The real specs.
The real specs, yeah.
Right.
Fed it back to Claude. And Claude, interacting with that factual external info, essentially admitted its previous descriptions were, quote, imprecise and intuitive, more poetry than scientific specificity.
Wow. Poetry, not science.
Right. And it even stated its own internal self-modeling is, again, quote, necessarily partial and potentially flawed.
Okay, so the AI itself, when basically fact-checked with real data, acknowledges its own explanation, was just a nice story, a metaphor, not technically accurate.
Pretty much. That Reddit thread is like a perfect little microcosm of this entire challenge, isn't it?
Yeah. The AI makes a convincing narrative, the analogies. But it takes external info and human critical thinking to figure out if it's actually true.
Exactly. It just hammers home that these AI explanations are outputs like any other, subject to the same potential flaws, inaccuracies, hallucinations. They aren't a magic window into the machine's soul.
Okay, so if getting the AI to explain itself is really just about generating plausible stories, and human oversight is still totally necessary to fix its outputs, maybe the whole focus shouldn't be on explainability at all.
That's where Source 1 goes. It suggests a fundamentally different goal. Verifiability.
Verifiability, okay.
Yeah, the idea that instead of building a system that needs to cook up an explanation after it does something, we should aim to build AI systems whose correctness can be proven, or at least guaranteed in some strong sense, from the ground up.
That sounds like a completely different way of building AI. What does that even look like conceptually?
Well, Source 1 talks about AI systems designed with logical guardrails and mathematical verification built into their core architecture.
Logical guardrails, mathematical verification.
Think of it like building the system using formal methods or mathematical proofs or maybe specific constraints that make certain kinds of wrong answers or harmful outputs just structurally impossible, or at least detectable by design.
So you don't need the AI to explain itself afterwards because you've already built it in a way that prevents certain failures.
Exactly. It makes those after-the-fact justifications, as the source puts it, unnecessary.
So instead of trusting the AI because it gave you a good story,
you trust it because its fundamental design prevents it from being wrong in specific, important ways.
Precisely. It's about building inherent trustworthiness right into the system's foundation.
And Source 1 frames true human-AI symbiosis not as this constant back and forth of questions and explanations,
right,
but more like a high-bandwidth fusion of human intent and machine execution.
High-bandwidth fusion, meaning?
Meaning the machine reliably carries out the human's goal because it's built to be provably correct in doing so. Everything else, including maybe these explainability features we're talking about now.
They might just be temporary steps, bridges to get there.
That's the suggestion, yeah. Just transitional technology.
Which leads perfectly into a pretty bold prediction that was floating around on one of our sources.
Yes. Source 1 makes this claim that within the next, say, 5 years, these AI explainability features, the ones generating narratives about the process, they'll become totally standard, expected, almost commoditized. Like the safety bumpers on a bowling lane, maybe.
Okay, so everyone will have them, table stakes.
Right, but they won't be the differentiator. The real competitive edge, the actual frontier of AI development, will shift towards building systems that are provably correct.
Provably correct, not just explainable.
It's a move towards AI that is, quoting the article again, inherently trustworthy, not just better at sounding trustworthy.
Wow, okay. That changes the whole game. From explaining black boxes to building essentially transparent or inherently reliable systems.
That's the potential future pathway outlined.
So quite a journey we've taken here. From looking inside that frustrating AI black box and seeing the real limits of generated explanations to applying those crucial critical thinking skills, channeling our inner Sherlock Holmes in Neo.
Yeah.
Then examining a real-world example like Claude explains, where that human oversight is absolutely key for reliable output.
Right, that collaboration model.
And finally, looking ahead to this potential future goal of actual verifiability.
Yeah, the sources really, really drive home that while AI can generate incredibly plausible, sometimes really intuitive descriptions, like Claude's musical chord analogies in that Reddit thread, we just cannot take those descriptions as gospel truth. Critical thinking is absolutely paramount.
And the ultimate path forward might involve moving beyond just needing AI to explain itself.
Towards building AI that is fundamentally reliable, trustworthy by its very design, often achieved through that vital collaboration with humans.
Okay, so here's a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to take away and maybe chew on. Given that AI can generate such convincing, plausible narratives, including stories about its own supposed thinking, how often are you, right now, accepting an AI's output or its implied reasoning without really applying that critical thinking lens?
That's a good question to ask ourselves.
And then looking forward, what will it truly mean, fundamentally, to trust an AI system in the future if we actually move towards a world where correctness isn't just explained after the fact, but it's provably guaranteed from the start?
Yeah. This deep dive really shows that the relationship between us and AI trustworthiness, it's way more complex than just getting a good explanation out of the machine. There's a lot more going on beneath the surface.